All right. Good morning. How's everybody doing? Pardon me, I'm checking the feeds here, just making sure that everybody looks good. And I gotta just move some stuff around here. I gotta quiet this thing because I don't want to hear that. I just move these in place so that if I do have any feedback on any of the feeds, I gotta get them in the right order here though. I thought I moved that one. I did not move that one. Let me move that one over here. And then this one, which would be, where is it? That one. There we go. Excuse me, now I can see all the comment feeds. And that way, if anybody does leave a comment, I won't miss it. Actually, if you give me 1 second, I have to switch something on my computer over here so that I can see which camera I actually have posted up, because it makes it easier for me. So you won't notice any difference, but I notice a huge difference because it actually just gives me a live input of my camera feeds so that I can make sure you're getting the best view possible. All right, and I'm all kind of settled in. I'm a little messy on the bench today. I was busy in the shop this weekend and working on some bases, doing some stuff kind of behind the scenes, taking care of some things that we had looked at previously in different episodes, but I was just kind of finishing up those tasks. So usually what I like to do is at least do, like, I'm making multiple bases. So there's a number of them, kind of like a production run, so to speak. Not really production, but more than one at a time. And in order to not bore you with repetition of doing the same things over and over again, or watching me do, my glasses are filthy, watching me do the same things over and over again, generally what I will do is either pre-make some of the things for the other bases and then show you, or do it here and then finish those up off camera, because obviously I'm not on all day every day, and so I have a lot of extra shop time to work with. So I did some stuff this weekend, kind of got ahead of schedule on some of these, but I left one where there's one base that we left off on that I will finish up some of the things to catch up to the other boxes today, or the other bases. What else is going on? It was a gorgeous weekend. Hope everybody had a lovely Easter weekend, if that was your thing. If it's not your thing, I still hope you had a lovely weekend. We had really awesome weather here yesterday. It's a little windy, but otherwise like 72 degrees and sunny, and took the bike out for a ride and took the dogs for a walk. And yeah, it's a good day to I wanted to be in the shop more. I worked some in the shop, but I had to get outside. It was just so nice. And opened the doors to the shop a little bit. Got some fresh air in here. The only problem with now is that if I leave it open too long, it'll start to turn green in here because the pollen is starting. And if you're ever in Northern Virginia in spring, you know that mostly the cars are kind of neon green around here because we get a ton of pollen. So anywho, so what's on the agenda for today? Well, before we kick that off, let me show you, this is a project that I started it with the others, so sewing machine base, not overly complicated here. But this one actually was an oops. I'm gonna just call it my oops box. In that, here's a standard, grab this one right here. This is a standard sewing machine base with a lid. Side compartment, there's a lid on here, right? So machine goes in here, get a little storage place over here, good to go. When I was measuring out the wood, I was like, well, let me make one that does not have a storage base. So in essence, it should have only been, like if you cut this box off right here, it should only have been this wide. I don't know what I was doing that day when I had the measuring tape in my hand, but I can tell you that it was not paying attention because this base right here is a little bit larger than it should have been. This was the one that was not going to have a storage compartment. It was just going to be a base. So basically a box, right? And some corner posts, and then the machine would sit in, and it really simple construction. I have no idea what I was doing. Anyway, either I looked at the wrong set of plans when I took the measurements, or I transposed some numbers. My dyslexia kicked in. I'm not dyslexic, by the way, so. But sometimes it feels like I am because when I make measurements. Anyway, this base, the interior measurement from here to here should have been like 14 and 3/4 inches. That's the measurement. Like if I measure this base right here, it's 14 and 3/4 inches long. Well, this base on the interior should have been, and then if I do the exterior, this base is 16 and 1/8. No, I'm sorry, 16 and 5/8. This base is 18 and 3/8. What the hell? I have no idea. Anyway, long story short, this base ended up longer. It was not long enough to get a side compartment, but it was too long to just be a base. I couldn't really do anything to fix it because had I not done this and put the logo on it, which I don't know if you can see that or not, there's a logo on here, right there. Let me switch over here. So you can see that there's a lovely logo on the front of that. But the logo is centered on the wood. It's in the middle. Had I said, well, let me just chop it off, then the logo would have been offset, and that would have been really weird and not good. So my big brain said, well, what can we do to make this right? What can we do to make this base still usable and functional and look like it was kind of meant to be the way it is? And so what I came up with was not necessarily a storage compartment in the front, but a bed extension. So you've got the bed of the sewing machine, and then here, I'm going to grab a sewing machine here. Oh, if you're not familiar with vintage sewing machines, this is a vintage sewing machine right here. I'll put you back over here. So this is a vintage sewing machine. I think this is like a, I don't know, model 15. It's seen better days. So this is one that is mainly used for, I keep it out here in the shop. I try to keep the dust off of it as best I can. But this one is mainly used for sizing my bases that are for what we call the standard size Singer sewing machines. I'm not a sewing machine guy, so I don't have a ton of information on the actual sewing machines, except to say that there are what I call the standard size vintage machines, which would be like a model 66 and a 15 and a 115 and a 201, and there's a few others. And those are the ones they made the most of. There's millions of those things. And so those are the ones, like the Model 66 Red Eye is probably the most popular vintage sewing machine on earth. They're workhorses. They just still to this day, they just work. You clean them up and they just sew. So they're amazing. But anyway, this is a standard base. I use this one as a template for sizing my bases and such, just to check. So what I did was, I already cut corners for this thing, which we're going to get into today, but I cut corners for it. And it's like, okay, well, I can make an extension for this bed, and which is what I did. So that's what this is right here. This is a bed extension. Let me give you a little closer look here. So I made this extension, and basically what I did was I measured the distance here. I made a little cutout of what the end of the bed looks like. So I made this, and then I could use that to draw it onto this piece of wood and get that curvature just right. I made a little handle so you could pick this thing up. And then this thing, and then if you look inside here, I don't know if you can see those or not, but I made inserts all along the edge here, and that just holds this in place. So instead of making a rabbet cut and making this go larger, I just made this as an inset, and then it fits just like that. So this is a what I'm calling a bed extension for this sewing machine. And I don't know, I think it kind of turned out kind of cool. I don't know if it has any sellability. So this one is going to my wife. So I just called it an Easter present. So anyway, that's going to my wife. Because I mean, I hate it. I did all the work, right? It looks pretty and everything. It's just I screwed up that measurement. And luckily I screwed up lengthwise. If I made it too long. If I'd made this too short, I would have been hosed. There was nothing really I could do about it. But because I actually did make it too long, excuse me, that means that I'm able to do something on here to make it workable. And so that's what I did. Right now I'm trying to figure out how to glue in these corners over here, because there's nothing to brace them against coming back. They set forward of those little side pieces just a little bit. And it's like I said, these are little challenges I work at, but I cut this out. I actually had this from when I made the other lids. I actually had this leftover piece, which worked out super well. And it's very pretty in there. And yeah, so that's what this thing is you know, I call it my oops base. But in reality, it's kind of a nice little feature there with the added bed. For anybody who doesn't know, these were treadle machines. For the most part, these are treadle machines. And treadles, you've seen them, they have the foot pedal down below. There's usually they sit in a table, and then they have a foot pedal that wobbles back and forth, and there's a leather strap that runs from a big wheel down there that you're pedaling with the treadle, and it loops over here, and then that actually turns the machine and makes the mechanism work. You can also, there's a little bracket here, you can mount a hand crank onto this, and a lot of people like to use these as hand sewing machines. So they will put a handle on here and they will sew by hand. And my wife does that quite a bit, and a lot of people do that. They love the hand cranks and they sew with these. So that's kind of the way these bases get used anyway. They're either as display pieces, which this would be a lovely display piece, or they are practical in nature because you can use them for sewing with a hand crank. Can't do motors on these particular ones because the motor mounts and all the other stuff, it's just too much. So these are strictly for like what we would call hand crank machines. And that, for some of you, is way more information than you ever wanted about a vintage sewing machine. But I think it's a good illustration of kind of looking at a situation where it could have been a pile of scrap wood for the burn barrel, and I turned it into a win, you know, just by kind of stepping back and looking at it and thinking about it and like, okay, what can I do to still make it work, and what changes can I make to my design and other such things. So I guess the moral of the story is, you know, if you haven't catastrophically screwed something up, you know, take a step back and let it marinate for a little bit and kind of try to figure out what can you do to save your project. Because honestly, when I first did that, I was like, oh, and I saw that logo in the middle and I was like, there's no way I can't, there's nothing I can do with this. I'm hosed. But then I had the little idea and it's kind of come around. So I worked on this weekend and I'm really happy about it. The big thing, like I said, is gluing these into place right here. Because I have to clamp them into place. I mean, you need the clamping pressure to really get that piece of wood bonded to that side piece. You don't want to, because all of the pressure of the sewing machine rests on these posts, you really need a good bond with this piece of wood right here, which is a corner post. You need a good bond between this piece of wood right here and this post right here. Typically, they're sitting in corners. So you can see right here, I've got two glue surfaces right here, one on each corner, because that's just a a triangular piece of wood, right? So I'll be gluing on this side and this side right here. Both these sides will get glue, and this thing will be super, super strong. I mean, the wood would fail before the joint does. This one, not as super strong, so I really need to make sure that I'm getting a really good clamping pressure in there. And because these do not rest, I don't know if you can see it or not, but they don't rest, there's space right here in between these, and it's like a little over 1/8 of an inch. What I might end up doing is putting finding a thin piece of wood to use as a spacer. I think this is, yeah, it's not going to work. I was just looking for a thin piece of wood. All of these are too big. I will look in my scrap bin and find a thin piece of wood that is about that thickness and put that in there so that when I clamp these, because I clamp it this way, I've got a little jig that I use, and I'll show you that when we do another one. But when I clamp it, it puts the pressure against there, and it needs something, otherwise it's just going to slide backwards. And it needs to be in this position right there. So I'll work through that. I might not do that on camera, and we may do that off camera, and we'll just kind of show you what we came up with. Moving forward to what we're going to work on today. So that was my weekend, kind of like, let me get stuff done. Let me set this over here. Make sure all the pieces are together. So moving forward today, what we're going to work on is this base right here. Let's see. Oh, dropped my nickel on the floor. It's my lucky nickel I used to round corners. Last Friday, we did a couple things. We cut a very long piece of board, and we made like a 45-degree angle cut. And so I have that over at the miter saw, because that's what I'm using to cut into pieces to make the corners. So you can see there's a little corner piece right there. But what you saw me do, if you were here, was to make these lids. And we centered these lids. Yeah, we cut the triangular piece of wood, but we also made these. And this is kind of what we focused on, was making these lids. These are book matched pieces of cherry that we took a piece of wood and we split it open, glued them together, made these lids. They're all done now. And what I have to do is, there's a half circle drawn right here at the top. Hopefully you can see that. And there we go. That is going to be a finger hole, and then I have to get these flattened down because they are still proud of the surface there. So you can see that they stick up a little bit higher than the rest of the base. So we're going to plane these down and get them just flush with the top. And to demonstrate that point, what I've got is this one. Like I said, some of this stuff I do off camera. So I did these this weekend. So you can see, let me grab this one right. I like this one. There we go. So this weekend I took these and planed them down. And why did I pay? Oh, never mind. I planed these down so that they are flush with the surface. Although this one needs, I kind of missed just a little. I got to flatten this one just a hair. And I also did the little circles up top. And I do these. Like I said, I used to do these on the spindle sander, the whole thing on the spindle sander, and I just would burn through, like, well, here, I'll show you. I would just like melt through a piece of sandpaper on there. It was ridiculous. And I finally figured out that if I could just cut this out with my bandsaw and remove the bulk of the wood, then I could just use the spindle saw to clean that out and make it a nice smooth finger hole. But you need that because when you stick these in, you need some way to get this out beside your fingernails. So this is kind of my little, hopefully semi-elegant solution to getting those out. So today, what we're going to work on is this base underneath. We are going to flatten this down and make the circle for the finger hole. And then the other thing we're going to do is we're going to cut some corner posts and we're going to glue those in. And I've got some little jigs that I've made here for for doing the corner gluing. And yeah, that should do it. One thing I like to do when I'm getting these leveled down, hand sawing these things, if they're super thick, and I've got like, you know, 1/8 of an inch of wood sitting above the frame here, that's a lot of hand saw or hand planing. I mean, that's a lot of hand planing. And in order to reduce that down, a lot of times what I will do is actually mark, and I'm going to do it on this one as well. I mark the edge so that I can see just how far above the sides this is sticking. So I'm going to go ahead and mark this all around the sides here. And I'm getting it right in that edge because I want to see that line really well. That lets me know how much more I have to take off to get this flush. And then I'll pop this out and look at it, and so you can see that little line on there. It goes all the way around. You see it on this side. And what I like to do a lot of times is, instead of wearing out my hand plane, I take this over and make a few passes on my jointer just to take the surface down. That allows me to get it close and then finish it with the hand plane. Now, I've already got my half circle drawn on there, but that doesn't really matter. I can take that down a little bit, so that's not a huge deal. I don't think I have a camera set up over at the jointer. Can you see the jointer from here? Sort of. I don't think you can see the jointer on this camera. Not really. This one? No. Oh God, that's a lovely shot of my ear. That one's set up for the saw over there. So let's tell you what. Let me just make a quick pass. I'm gonna make 2 quick passes. Hopefully you'll still see me in the camera here without me having to make too many adjustments. I'm gonna tell you what. There we go. That works. I'm gonna make a couple of passes with the jointer. They're really light passes, and get that really close, and then we'll come finish this up over at the bench here. I'm gonna grab my ear protection, and let's get this. Like I said, I just want to get this close. I don't need it to be down to the line. I'd rather get it really narrowed or zoned in with the hand plane, but this gets me close. All right. I don't want to go any further than that because I'm really close to the edge right here. I don't know if you can see that, but the line is really close to the edge right there, and I don't want to go past there because then I'm in and have to maybe do the whole thing over again, which would not be good. All right, I'm going to put this in here, and let's get down this way. There we go. So I've got my hand plane here. This is my number 62 low angle jack plane. I've said it before, I'll say it again. This is my all-time favorite plane right there. This thing is pretty amazing. I'm going to put this block down here just as a hold on this little Kreg workbench clamp, which works like that. It goes into the dog holes and then it clamps against. But this hole is too close, and this hole's too far. This piece of wood just kind of gives me an opportunity to hold it there. So I do not need these ears on my head though. All right, let's go ahead and take this down. Now, one of these edges, this edge right over here, is pretty low. But let me see what I can get going here. Now, the other problem with hand planing these is that the wood, the grain is running one direction on one side and the opposite direction on the other. It because they're book matched, they got flipped. One side got flipped over and married to the other, and when you flip it over, it flips that grain direction. I'm gonna move my bench out of the way here so I can get a better angle on this. I could do this either way. I could push towards the table. This is the way I like to have this clamped in. And I do it with it in the base so that I can really, I use the edge of the base as a guide to, you know, how far I need to go. Probably use a little wax on the sole of my plane here, but it's all right. Still high on this side. Just work all the way across. So I'm getting nice wide shavings, which is good. This side's a little higher. And I'm just using my fingers to feel the edges as a guide to how much further I need to go. These things are like very staticky. Getting close. You can see it's harder to push on this side because I'm probably going against the grain. Oops. There we go. So it's a little easier of a push over on this left side. This side is getting really close. Yeah, in fact, and I can tell when I catch the edge, it's time to stop. So it's pretty good. So that's running nice and true. And still over here, it's still high. Okay, and then the other thing is I'll sand these down so even if they're just a touch high, by the time they get sanded, I'll lose that little bit of extra height, but I can still feel where some of this is just a little higher than it should be. And if nothing else, you know, using the hand planes is a workout, so not too bad. All right, let's see here. Feels good. That was nice. Yeah, this is really close now. Done. Yep. So I'm starting to catch this edge just a tiny bit, which means we are finished. All right. Let me unclamp. And then, hang on a second, I'm gonna dump all the sawdust in my garbage can and then give you a look. And you can see now that our lid is now nice and flat with the edges. And now I gotta use my fingernail to pull it up, which is why we're gonna do this next thing. We are going to, well, I have to find my nickel that dropped on the floor. It's my lucky nickel. There it is. This is the nickel I use. I just made old man noises when I bent over. That's sad. I just made the old man grunt when I bent over. That's just embarrassing. Do you ever make the old man grunt? That's not good. You know, when you catch yourself and you're like, oh my God, did that noise come out of me? It did. It did come out of me. That's ridiculous. Where did that come from? All right. I've got my my nickel. And what I'm going to do is use that to trace a nice round profile for a finger, if you will, on here. So I need to find my center line, and then I'll place this. I like to use the back and use Monticello as my halfway point on the back of the nickel there, and then make sure it's kind of centered on that center line, because this was book matched and glued together, there is a nice center line on there. All right. And then once I get that traced in, it looks like that. If you can sort of see it, I don't know. It's kind of hard to get an angle here where you can actually see things. But there you go. So you can see I've got that little mark right there. Now, in order to actually cut that out, like I said, I used to use my spindle sander. Now I just use that to clean the hole up, which you'll see in a minute. But let's go over to the bandsaw. The bandsaw, I think that's over here. There we go. Look at that bandsaw. And I gotta move this over, hook up some dust collection in here. And then what I'm gonna do is just make a series of cuts in here, just small cuts, and basically just get rid of all this wood while trying to stay just inside of that pencil line. And so it really doesn't matter which blade I have. I still have my resaw blade on here, and it really doesn't matter. In fact, I like the resaw blade because it takes a pretty good bite out of the wood, has a little bit wider kerf, and allows me just to kind of clear things up. But anyway, here's how I do this. Hopefully you can see fairly well. It's hard to get the camera angles sometimes. Oh. All right. So I know that seems a little tedious, but trust me when I tell you that it is super efficient, and you can see that there are some tiny little lines and stuff in there, but that's all going to be cleaned out. And I basically just run that blade in a series of cuts just vertically through here, just run those down through there and get all that wood, but I kind of keep it right inside my line and clears away so much wood. It's so fast. And like I said, I just, you know, this was a really, I think this was an 80 grit, and I would just pummel these things. So now it's much faster compared to, it also took a long time. The wood would burn and smoke, and now it's super easy to do that. And so that is really the way that I cut these finger holes now. Just super efficient. Like I said, it seems like it takes a little bit longer, but as compared to, like, the other thing I could do if I really wanted to was put a super thin blade on there, like a, I don't know, like a 3/16 blade on something on there, but I would have to change the blade out, reset up the machine on the bandsaw, and then do this super tiny cut that would still need to be cleaned out in the end. So I just leave the big blade on there and let the spindle sander do the rest of the work. Speaking of which, I actually have that sitting right here because I did use it this weekend for the others. And I figured we'd use it today, so I left my spindle sander up here. Hang on while I move things out of the way. I normally keep this stored under a bench. It's pretty lightweight. It doesn't weigh a ton. This is the Triton, what is this? The TSPS 450 oscillating spindle sander. And as spindle sanders go, it's pretty much just like every other spindle sander on the market out there. There's larger ones, like Jet makes some bigger, like freestanding, huge oscillators. Most of the ones you're going to find that are benchtop look exactly like this. The colors are changed to protect the innocent, but otherwise, there is no difference at all. They are exactly the same. They all have, in the back, let me show you. It's easier if I do it this way. So along the back, they have different spindles that fit on this tall spindle right here. There's a big giant one right here. And these things are great for sanding inside corners. You can't really get, well, obviously, like just like this is, you know, it's an inside corner. Doing anything like that or anything that's curved on the interior is super hard to sand and really get a nice finish on there. The spindle sander makes quick work of those kind of things, and especially since you have all these different sized spindles that you can choose from. On the front of the machine, you have storage for all the different dust rings. So depending on which one you're using, you'll take the appropriate dust ring, and that minimizes the gap around here and allows for all the dust to suck in through the holes there. So I think I have on here right now a 1 inch. Actually, this is like a 3/4 inch sander right there. And I'm going to plug this in. Let me grab my extension cord here. And we will plug this in. And I'll show you I made one tiny modification to this machine. And it makes my life so much easier. And that is on the back, it has a dust port right here. And this dust port is nothing really that I had fit on that dust port. So I modified it with one of these rubber hose fittings. And it just has a band clamp up here and a band clamp up here. You tighten this down to, and it fits on the end of my hose now. And it just kind of is like a nice friction fit in there. And that does a fantastic job of just really getting all the dust extract. Because this thing, I mean, it's a sander. It makes a ton of dust. It does a great job of pulling the dust down through these holes up top, but you have to have good collection on the backside. You really need to hook a vacuum up to this. A bag wouldn't do it because there's nothing to actually create suction. Unlike a belt sander or whatever that shoots the dust out, this needs a suction to pull the dust down through and then back out this port. So, but yeah, using this little hose clamp right here, which I can't tell you what size this is. It's like anyway, you just find the ones that fit what you need. I had a bunch of these things that I did to fit my other machines, and this one works great. All right, let me grab this. And what we're going to do is we're just going to work this into that slot right there. I don't know if which one's easier or better to see, probably none of them. But we're just going to work this into that sander right there. It spins this way, but the beauty of a spindle sander is it doesn't just spin, it also goes in an up and down motion, which kind of like an oscillating sander, which has multiple motions because it's spinning and it's twirling or oscillating. This thing goes up and down and spins, so you get a cleaner sanding at the end. So let me get my ears. Also vacuum loud, and this thing's loud, so here we go. All right, that's pretty much it. I mean, you can see, hopefully you saw the motion of the oscillator, and it creates a super nice finish on the inside here. There's no burn marks now. There's no saw marks inside there. That is all nice and clean. And yeah, I mean, it's just smooth as can be. So I still need to probably sand around the edges of this thing, but that right now is perfect. And so I don't use this thing a ton, but when I need it, especially like if I'm doing a guitar or something like that that has interior contours and such, this thing is so handy. I believe there's a link to this in my description, maybe, if you wanted to at least look at one and see what, I have no idea what they run. Tell you what, I can wake up my computer here. I can tell you if I have a link to it. Let's see, do I have a link in here to this? I think possibly. I do not have a link in there to that. But anyway, I'm pretty sure you can go to, let's see here, Triton, just so you know, TSPS 450. Now, they may have changed the model number since I bought mine, but nope, there you go. You can buy this at Woodcraft. And like I said, you're going to find a whole bunch that are, they look almost identical to these. Yeah, but 180 bucks, which is, I think, less than I paid for mine a few years ago. It was still pretty new when I got mine in terms of like a new tool. And, but it's, like I said, if you're doing interior curves, you need something that you can really get your hands on and get inside there and have some options for different spindle sizes, because you can obviously wrap a piece of sandpaper around a dowel and do that, but God, that's so much work compared to what I just did with that machine. And the other thing is that because it has a nice cast iron top, that spindle is at a perpendicular 90-degree angle to that top, which means you're going to get very square, crisp interior lines in there. You're not going to, if I took a dowel, like I have one right here, a piece of sandpaper on it. So this is basically just a piece of sandpaper wrapped around a dowel, right? So it's a 1/2-inch dowel. And I can use this to do interiors. Like I could use this if I was sanding something inside of a groove, right? But the problem is I'm not really being square and perpendicular to my surface here. Just the nature of the way that I have to hold it and move my wrist and everything else. But if I'm using this on the spindle sander, now this is flat on that table and this is moving up and down and it's completely perpendicular. So that's one of the big advantages to using a spindle sander as opposed to just wrapping a dowel with sandpaper. It works, just not as well. Okay, we don't need to see this anymore. Well, I don't need to see this anymore. You didn't get to see it. But anyway, if you go look it up, it just Triton spindle sander. There are other companies that make them if you want something inexpensive. Win makes one. Like I said, some are more expensive, like Shop Fox makes one that's more industrial. But then they make one that looks exactly like that, just a different color. And that one's $170 as well. So the one sander that I really want, and they're now, I think, who was it that had the patent on it? I'm going to say it was the Home Depot brand. And they, so it has a band sander along with a spindle sander built into it. And I can't remember what they call that. It's an oscillating spindle and belt sander. So they make one of those now too. And they're really cool. And I really want one of those because I can see a lot of uses for it. If I got that, I'd probably get rid of this one because it's basically the same, it's two tools in one. So I would probably get rid of one of those if I bought the one and get rid of the other. But anyway, for right now, spindle sander, just look up Triton or spindle sander and you'll find a slew of them. I'll put that link in my description after the fact. I don't know why I don't have that in there. Some of the links I have are affiliate links. If it's an Amazon link, it's an affiliate link, which means I do get a kickback, not a kickback, but a little reward for you purchasing through that link. It costs no more for you, which is really kind of cool. And it just gives me a little something, but there's other links in there to other places. If it wasn't available at Amazon, I put the link in for Woodcraft or for Lowe's. Like my table saw is only available at Lowe's. So there's a link to that. So anyway, links down below. I will try to remember to put a link for that machine in there so that you can see it. Because I've got a lot of my bigger tools, but that's a really cool one. So I think that would be worth having in the description just so you could see it if you wanted to go find it. All right, moving on. Oh, hang on, let me get this out of the way, do my computery maintenance stuff here because I got to move this window over so I can see all of those thousands of comments. Oh wait, there's no comments. Is everybody sleeping in today? Are you all working? I'm sorry if you are. That sucks. I no have to work, which is nice. All right, got my base. I have my lid, which is really nice. It's still a little high right there. Just kind of still want to hit that with the, was I doing it the other way before? Did I have it this way? I think I had it that way because that feels more like it. But I put the finger hole at this end because I kind of like this, a couple little knots down here at the bottom. So if you look here on this, it has like two little knots right here, and I kind of like those. So I wanted those to be at the bottom, just kind of like a feature. You can see how the book matching kind of gives you this, and you can turn it this way too, it doesn't really matter, but kind of gives you this symmetrical pattern on both sides. I did like those knots though at the bottom, so I put them there. But if I put this in here, this is, yeah, see, that's a little, it's all right. It's all good. So moving on, what do we need to do next? Well, we need to, this is one of the most challenging parts to this, and it's easy, but it's challenging in that trying to figure out how tall to make the corner posts. Let me just grab one out of here for a second. I cut some already just to play around. So this is, like I said, this is like one of my corner posts. It's just a triangular piece of wood. And trying to figure out exactly how tall to make these is really the challenge. And here's the reason why. I'm going to go back to my machine over here for just a moment and tell you why this is such a challenge for me to get this right. Let me get my feet up on the stool here. I'm kind of cramped for space. This is a cast iron bed. These are cast iron I think they're cast iron machines, pretty sure. They lasted forever. And they're covered in japanning, which is a crazy process. If you don't know what japanning is, look it up. I think it's just like it sounds, Japaning, japanning. But it's stuff that if you look back, turn of the century through 1950s, a lot of stuff, I think from after the 1950s, they turned to something called Bakelite, which is like a plastic kind of thing. But early on, japanning was what they used as kind of like a hard enamel covering for things. And they all kind of have this. And then they're sprayed with, I don't know, like a lacquer or something over top. Anyway, moving on. These are cast iron beds. The problem is they're not highly machined. So while they were all pretty close to the same size, I mean, if you look, there's holes in the back of this thing, and those holes were meant to rest on hinge pins. So they had to be fairly accurate with them when they were making these, because they didn't want to, they didn't want to have to hand make these things. And they made millions of them, if I didn't mention that already. But their casting was not perfect. And the problem that presents to me as someone who's making a base is that I put, where'd my little corner go that I just had? Am I going crazy? Or did I rest it in here? Yeah, I rested it in here. So when I make my bases, I make them so that these corner pieces fit under the corners of these the base or the bed of the sewing machine. And there's one that goes in each corner. So they sit in the corners of the base, the machine rests on them. There you go. Nice and easy, holds it up. Here's the problem. If I turn on my handy dandy calipers here and zero them out, well, let's see, this one, 0.30, okay, so 0.3 of an inch. This one, 0.25. This one over here, gentle with this thing. This one over here, let me see what this one is. 0.26. This one way back over here. I might have to turn it this way to get this one so I can read it. 0.29. There is not a single corner of these beds that is the same thickness. And that's an issue, because when I cut these things, the bottom is all going to sit, each part of these, one of these is going to sit on this corner right here. It's going to sit up on that corner, and rest itself on that corner. Well, if I cut these all the same, my machine's going to be a little wonky. It just is. And there's no real way around this. I went down and grabbed another machine. I've got a really pretty machine that I use for taking photographs when I'm getting ready to sell my bases. And it's a really pretty, it's decorated and stuff. Anyway, I put that in my bases and use that as a model for taking photographs. And I went down and grabbed that one and said, well, let me measure this one. Maybe, because it's really pretty and whatever, it's just as bad. The measurements are not the same for each one. So you're talking about as much as 5/100ths of an inch, which, I mean, you're like, that's not too much. But yeah, 5/100ths of an inch is really, it's about a millimeter. I mean, it doesn't seem like much. Let's see if you can see. That's 5/100ths of an inch right there. If you put something in a base where everything is even, but there's 5/100ths of a millimeter or 5/100ths of an inch difference from one corner to the other on the base of the machine itself, it tips, it wobbles. And that's just something I can't do anything about, because each machine is different. Every single one has a different measurement. The problem I have, that's not a big deal, because it's like, okay, well, just cut them all the same, and then they can use padding for them or whatever. Okay, that's fine. But then which measurement do I use as the measurement to cut these two. And that's where I kind of struggle with this, is how far down do I measure? Do I measure 3/10 of an inch down and then make it, you know, the rest of the length is how thick this is going to be? Or do I measure 0.25 inches? And that's something I always struggle with, because everybody's machine is going to be slightly different. I mean, the simple fix is you put a felt foot underneath a corner that's wobbling and you're fine. So if you have some felt feet, they make thin felt feet and thick felt feet, you can put felt feet on the corners and level out your machine and it'll be just fine. That's not a big deal, but the big deal is I don't want to cut these so long that the machine, you know, it might fit well for this one, but the other ones will be sitting too high because they're thicker. You don't want to go too short, because then you have to use really thick felt pads. So that's kind of my conundrum when I'm trying to figure these things out. It's like, oh, there's no precision in these things in terms of the beds. All the precision goes into the mechanism for sewing, not into the actual corners of the beds. What I've come up with is I'd rather go have something that's a little short, and then they can actually add a thicker pad in if they need to. So these are some that I was playing with, and I cut these at 2.5 inches. 2.5 inches gives me about 3/16 on here. And 3/16 is, I don't know if you want to take that into, this is why it's like, this is why metric is so much easier. For those of you who don't like metric, you know, so 0.17 would be the thickness. So if this was going to be 0.25, this would actually set above it, above the edge by, I don't know, like a 1/16 of an inch. It would be basically almost a 1/16 of an inch above the sides. That's okay. I mean, these don't have to be flush exactly with the sides of the base. But anyway, so that's where I struggled with that for a long time. And it also depends, because if I make any variances in my bases, I have to remeasure, and that could be different from base to base. So I always measure it to make sure that what I'm cutting out is still giving me the same measurement for the top. So anyway, I hope that made sense. When you start making these things, you start looking at these little weird idiosyncrasies of these old things, which is kind of, you know, that's half the fun sometimes, but it's also, sometimes that's the struggle. Where did this come from? All right, hang on. You don't have any. You do, right? Just trying to put all these back where they belong. So I did cut corners for one of these, and we will go ahead and cut corners. Well, let's cut corners for this one right here. Let's start with that. So like I said, I want to go with 0.25 as my depth for the bed. We're just going to go with 0.25. If it's thicker than that, it'll set up, you know, like a 5/100th of an inch above that, but that's okay. So 0.25 is really simple, because that gives me 1/4 of an inch, right? So that's 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to mark my little Craig slidey scale here. I love this thing. And I'm going to make sure that this is 1/4 of an inch. And it appears to be just a hair short. So and it's all about where you line up the lines, right? So there we go. Now what I'm going to do is take that 1/4 of an inch, and I'm going to put a line on the inside of the, so now I've made my little lines on the sides. I don't know if you can see those inside there. So right up inside here, there's little lines that I drew right there. And so we're going to take those and we're going to measure those now. I will just use a regular measuring tape and try to measure those, because it's just easier sometimes. And that gives me, like I said, I want to measure each one, because my whole goal, see, this one is a little shorter over here. I want to get them so that they're equally 2.5 or 1/4 of an inch from the top. is what I want. I want it equal 125. So if the bottom's a little deeper on one, see this side is shorter than this side. So I'm gonna have to cut these a little shorter, which is weird, but it just is the way it is. But this one is 2.5. And why did I just lose my feed there? That's kind of weird. I don't normally lose that. If I take one of the ones that I just had, I can look, these were cut to 1/4 of an inch. Pardon me. These were cut to 1/4 inch. So I can measure that on here and just, or 1/4 of an inch. They were measured at 2.5 inches. So I can see that these fit really nicely in that 2.5 inch mark. Over here though, these are well above. So I'm gonna have to cut a couple of shorter ones on this side. Nothing's easy. Nothing's easy. All right. Why are you being a pain in the rear? I don't know. Let's try that again. There we go. So what I'm going to do is go over to the, where am I going to go? Over to the saw over here. Do I have that set up? I do have that set up nicely. All right, I'm going to go over to the saw, and I have my piece of triangular stock already cut from the other day, and it is sitting over here. And what we're going to do is, well, I'll come over here, and I'm going to use this to measure 2.5 inches, because that's how deep we want this to be. We want this 2.5 inches long. I will mark that on the end of this. There we go, 2.5 there. I just mark it all the way across so that I get a nice mark here of 2.5 inches. And then what we will do is take that over to the saw, and we will cut that out. But let me grab my dust collector, because as we've said before, nothing makes more dust than my circular saw, or than my crosscut saw. This thing is a dust machine. All right. Actually don't need this now. When this was longer, I put this kind of against there and it would just keep it from falling down, but not necessary now. I don't clamp it down to the surface. But what I do is I'm going to line this up with my blade, keep my little fingers off of my trigger. That's really important. I want one of the teeth to touch this line so I can get this lined up here. Right on the line there. All right. And not prepared because I don't have my ears. So let's get this going. All right. So now what we need to do is take this and measure to make sure that we have done our due diligence in getting this thing done. Now I'm just going to take a little piece of sandpaper here and clean the fuzzies off here really quick. There we go. All right. Put this on here. And that is exactly, you can see, it's exactly right there. So perfect. And that should fit this side? This side. Which side are we fitting here? I think it was this side. This side right here. Yeah, and this side right here. So I need one more that's exactly this size. What I'm going to do is take this and use it as a an exact size requirement for this one. And I've done this before. I don't know if you've watched me do this stuff over here. In essence, what I'm going to do, hang on, I have to clean this off a little bit. There's my sanding pads. Just have to clean the fuzzes off so I get a nice even lineup. Let me show you what I do here. Let me come over here. So what I do is I take this piece, I'll put it exactly in line with this one. I get it lined up so that it is perfectly flat and flush across this surface right here. Then I take this, I lower the blade down and I slide this into the blade so that when I pull this, so that when I cut through, that blade is gonna hit this bottom one in the exact same position. So that's how I get these lined up. I don't know if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. But let's get this one lined up and make another cut. But that would give me at least two. If I was cutting them all the same way, I would do this every single time, and I would use the same block to measure each one. But because I have to cut a couple of shorter ones, I'm gonna have to do this process twice. Anyway, that's there. I'm gonna hold this down. Of course, I left it way over there. There we go. Okay, so now I have my two of them that are exactly 2.5 inches. It's awesome. That gives me half. That's half, and that half. Now I need to measure this half, and for whatever reason, you know, it's off by a tiny bit, but if I made this a half, it would be sloping, and I don't want that. I want it to be at least square on this end. So this side is a 1/16 lower. Yeah, it's a 1/16 less. So I need to bring this back over and make this a 1/16 of an inch shorter than that 2.5 inches. So obviously 7/16. And we're just gonna do the same thing, get this fuzz off of here. Let me switch over here so you can at least see what I'm doing. So get the fuzz cleaned off so I get a nice flat measurement. I'm gonna set this up to be a 1/16 of an inch shorter. And make sure I get it right on the line there. Just like that. All right, and I'm gonna go ahead and mark this the same way I did the last one. Ouch, splinters. I just got all the splinters out of my fingers too. I hate that. All right, I know I'm a woodworker who hates splinters. It's crazy, right? Crazy. All right, there's my shorter one. And let's go cut this one and see if we can make two more of these. I won't bore you with the other parts. I'm just gonna cut it and measure, clean, and do the other one, the second one. So. Now, some of you may be saying, well, why don't you use a stop block on your machine over there? And typically I would. If these were longer pieces that I was cutting, a stop block is obviously the way to go because you just push your wood into the stop block, make your cut, and you're good to go. Problem is these are small, and the way that my fence is, I can't really get a clamp down in place to where I really want these to go. And these are exact height because of the way that I do that that measuring from one to the other. And these are the exact, I mean, it looks like a cube, right? They are exactly, you can see there's no areas here sticking up. They're exactly the same size. And I just find that I can get that level of precision doing it the way that I do. But yes, there is more than one way to do things, and that, you know, wouldn't work for some folks, and I get that. So, but for me, it does. So I'm going to put these in my corners here and just check my lines that I drew and make sure that these are hitting that line, and it looks as though it does. And then same here, and it does. All right, the other thing I do when I get to this point, just for fun, and remember that we already proved that this thing, this sewing machine is so not the same thickness. But what I do like to do is just take this, set it inside, check it out, look at it, make sure that everything looks good. And that kind of looks really cool, right? That's what it's supposed to look like. And it looks good. I like it. So we can do now is, let's move to the next part of this, which is to get these corners glued in. And this was a, this sometimes presents a little bit of a challenge, is gluing corners. I can't get that chair just in the right spot. It's probably because I have big giant feet. I can't get them past the legs. All right, so we need to get these glued in the right spot. These corners down here are easy. And what I usually do is I have these little corner braces that I made that fit into the corner here and then provide a clamping surface that can go straight at a 45-degree angle across, but it gives a flat clamping surface. So what I mean by that is, let's see if we can, let me turn this around this way. And I don't want to move these corners now because they're in the right locations. All right. So you can see the shape of this. Let me just get you a better angle here a little bit. There we go. So you can see the shape of this right here. I cut these out. This is like some oak, whatever that I cut these out of. And it fits, it's just a little 90-degree, fits in the corner right there. But what that allows me to do is have a face that is parallel to the face of this corner right here. You can see the corner right here and here. Now I have a parallel face running across that I can put pressure going this way and clamp this corner in to its new home by, I just apply a little glue to each side, put a clamp across here. That's all there is to it. That's the easy one. The difficult one is here on this side, because obviously if I try to use one of these little things, it's not going to work. It goes up here, but my clamping pressure needs to be right here. And you can't clamp from a 45 directly across and get a good clamp. So I made these lovely things. I don't know. It's just something I came up with. I stick these in the corner, and now, and they're not exact, but you can get a clamp across here and still get that clamping force. So this is just something that I cut. This is oak as well, or no, this is ash. Super strong wood. The grain is going this way instead of this way, so it won't snap off. Hopefully it provides a nice strong surface to do that with. Here's another one right here. Would go on this side. And like I said, it just provides that gluing strength that you need to get a good bond for those corners. Now what I do need is 4 clamps for this. This takes me a while to do these because I never have. Nobody has enough clamps. I don't care who you are. You don't have enough clamps. Norb Abrams does not have enough clamps. I'm just saying. So I just want to make sure that these are square in the corners. I'm going to grab my glue, and I'm going to grab a paper towel because I always need a paper towel when I'm gluing because I always make a mess. So let me grab a paper towel here. What time is it? 12:15. How the day does fly. supposed to be another nice day today, and I think I've got some finishing I need to do, some staining and such. So I think once I get done and get some of these in clamps, I won't make you watch me stain, but I think I'm going to have some staining to do today. Just that's the part that I always kind of get behind on. So anyway, let's see what we got here. So nice little block here. I know this one goes in this corner, and gonna get my glue. And I can never get these things open now. This one is, oh, there it goes. Jeez, so tough. Get the little glue stopper out now. About time for a new glue bottle here. And I'm just going to put a little glue on this side and a little glue on this side. I'm not really interested in sand. If there was some really bad saw marks on this face that's going to be facing out, I would probably sand those. But that's way too much glue. Way too much. And I tried to keep the glue away from the sides that are going to be near the outside edges, because if you get squeeze out in those areas, it's harder to control the squeeze out. So I try to keep the glue towards the interior corner and away from the, I mean, if it's heavy down at the bottom, and then I just put a little bit, just a thin amount right near the edge here, just like that. But I try to minimize the squeeze out because, well, it's squeeze out and it makes things messy. All right, got that one going in. And I'm just going to give it a little pressure for just a second or two, just to kind of let it set in place. There we go. I mean, it's not obviously set up, but yeah. Now these, because they are going to be holding up the machines, I try to keep these in the clamps for a few hours. I want as much time under pressure as I can get. Make sure these are pressed down. You got to press down on that corner block to make sure it's not rising up out of there. And then I just tighten the clamp. And there we go. So again, these are these little Bessie clamps, and I just do love these little Bessie clamps. All right, that's one. Let's get this one. We'll do the easy ones first, which are these corners. Here's another corner. And we'll take this and try to get all of any wood chips or anything out of the corners. Make sure that there's any squeeze out glue from when I put the base in. Make sure it's all cleaned out so that these are sitting flat and they're going to sit nice and square in the corners. So just a little bit more glue on these. I'm going to go a little less than I did that last one. Had a little much. Like I said, I'm just trying to keep it controlled so that if there is any extra glue, it's going towards the corner and not towards the outside edges here. And there's something on there. Get that off. All right, that's pretty thin, but very well covered, which is what I'm looking for, is just good coverage. You can see, there you go. Kind of see that little shiny. So it's well covered, but it's not doused in glue. It doesn't need to be super glue, because then all you're going to do is there's only so much glue you can squeeze in there. When you put a clamp on, all the excess is going to come out the sides, and then you're going to have to clean it up. So just why put any excess on there in the first place? Control your excess and you're good to go. All right, my clamping coordination here. Make sure this block is pushed all the way down. And then I try to put the screw part of the clamp, this part right here, I try to put this screw part right in the center of the base as much as possible, and that way it's hopefully providing even pressure across this little block and giving me nice clamping pressure. If you get the clamp up too high or down too low, it could like the piece could tip in the corner a little bit, and you're not going to get a great glue joint that way. All right, that's 2 corners down. Let's do 2 more over here. Now these, like I said, are using the these are using the little corner clamp things that I made. Let me just turn on. Oh, stop it. Turn on. Thank you. Using these little corner clamps. This is a little bit trickier, just from being able to manage the. Let me get it right. There we go. So these are a little trickier just because I have to kind of line up that clamp on the outside, or that clamping caul thing, whatever you want to call it, clamping jig. I have to get it lined up and centered and tightened, and I could use one more hand, would be handy, but I only had 2 when I was born, and so that's what I'm going to work with. 3 hands though. I mean, what would you do with that extra hand? I don't know. I could think of a couple of things that, you know, you could be eating the pizza and drinking the beer and holding the napkin. I mean, you got the whole system down there with 3 hands. You're an efficient machine, that's all I'm saying. All right. Got that one set in place. I've got this little clamp. Now, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll clamp this to the outside, and then sometimes I'll put this clamping thing on the inside, but just all depends on how I'm feeling and how I can get a handle on this. Let me get this down. All right, there we go. Because like I said, it's just kind of, sometimes it's just a matter of getting hand coordination going here. I got to get this corner pushed down, and then I can start applying force. Make sure it stays down. That's the thing, is when you apply clamps, sometimes the clamping pressure wants to pull up on your surface, and you need to make sure that it is still, as you're applying that clamp pressure, that it's still staying down. Yeah, so there you go. So that's how that one works, right? It's kind of interesting, but I'm still, like you see, I get that 45 degrees, and I'm getting that pressure on that clamp across the surface of my corner here, and that's really the key of that. So last one here, we're going to put a little glue on there, and you know, don't worry if you think you're not using it. You're using enough glue, trust me. Trust me, you do not need a ton. Like I said, anything you're not using just gets squeezed out. What you want to make sure is that you have full coverage, right? So you want it to be completely covered, not soaked, just a nice film of glue covering your wood, and there it is. And I need my paper towel because glue. And then we'll do the same thing with this one. This is pushed down. Get this clamp in place here. And I need to move it down a little bit because there we go. It wasn't all the way on a piece of wood here. This one needs to come over just a hair. Hang on. There we go. Okay. Got to get them lined up in the right spot. All right. That is one that is done and can be that can be set aside, and we can do another one. Before I do that though, I'm going to take just a couple of minute break. I'll be right back. So stick with me and we'll be right back. And we're back. I had to get a beverage because I'm a little dry in the throat here, so. Needed to wet the whistle before we move on. Let me grab 4 more clamps here. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think I have 10 of these. I wish I had like 20 of those things because, like I said, they're so useful. But I'm going to set this aside for right now. And actually, I will set this over here on my saw. And I'm going to I have to grab some more clamps. So hang on, just not clamps, but my clamping brackets. And I keep them in a box up here. And let me find those. Get a couple of those for doing some more corners. There we go. All right, this back. All right, so I have another set of these corners and then the little L-shaped brackets. And I already had some corners cut for this. So we can do these right here and get these going. And that will be one less thing to worry about. Now, like I said, the one thing you want to be sure, or that I need to be sure of when I'm doing these corners, is that I have any glue squeeze out from when I put these bases in. You're bound to get a tiny bit sometimes. But make sure that, you just grab a chisel and kind of clean out any little squeeze out, because that squeeze out, not only is it going to mess up your measurement by giving a surface that is irregular and maybe the corner is going to rest up on a piece of glue instead of setting on the bottom, but it also yeah, it just, I don't know how to explain it, but clean your corners. There, I said it. That's easy. All right, these actually worked out to all be the same size. So I did not have to do 2 different sizes on this one. This one just doesn't look clean, I think. There we go. These were all the same sizes right here, and that was fortunate for me because it makes life a little easier. Oh, this, I keep freaking out because I'm like, where's the emblem? No, this one has no logo on the front, so this is just a plain one right here. Yeah, so we can go ahead and I will glue these corners first. Same thing. We've got these little brackets not brackets, these little gluing blocks that fit right in the corners. I do this before I round the corners just because it's easier for me to get a nice, this bracket fits really nicely on that corner. If I had rounded these corners, because they're going to get a round over, they're going to get like a 1-inch round over on here. If I had rounded those corners off, well, it would be much harder for me to get this to not be tippy and move around. So I couldn't get that really nice parallel clamping force that I need for these corners. So that's why I saved that part of the base build until almost last, is that roundover. In fact, that roundover is the last thing we do structurally to this thing. After that, it's all sanding and finish work. I'll do like my little eighth inch bead around there, but pretty much it's all done. Once we get these corners in, we're going to do the roundovers, and then it's just finishing work from that point on. So all the construction will be finished at that point. Woohoo! And a lot of this stuff just really comes down to the fact that glue takes time. And so if you've got a piece that you're working on, doesn't have to be a base like this or whatever, just make sure you're taking into account how much time it takes to glue any sort of cabinetry or stuff that you're doing. If there's glue involved, you're going to have to account for that time. Don't rush the glue process, I guess is what I'm saying, because it's super critical. Now, if you're using one of those like super new glues, I haven't used it yet. I think DAP makes one which is like a 30-minute glue cure time. It's a super fast drying glue. I don't know how much setup time you get with that, but supposedly it is like super quick. And so for things where you need to do something and then move on, I guess that's what you would use. I like to give my stuff just time to marinate. You know, I just have found that not rushing my glue joints pays dividends in the end. And so that's how I do things. But you do you, because, you know, I'm not saying you're right or wrong. I'm just saying it's how I do it. So you do you, I'll do me. My advice is if you have to put things in clamps, give them at least 2 hours minimum. If you're using, let's put it this way, if you are using like good old fashioned wood glue, Type Bond or Elmer's or Gorilla or whoever, if you're using good old fashioned yellow wood glue, give it at least 2 hours. That's going to at least give you a really good chance of being bonded. 6 hours is usually my minimum. Most of the time, I don't like to go less than 6 if I'm gluing something that is now. If it's like a quick box build or something, and I'm gonna like put a couple of brads in it as well, I don't care. But something like this, you know, this would work better with my corner in place, by the way. But something like this, where I want it to hold up over time, I'm going to go ahead and give it that time to cure and really set and just be a really outstanding bond. I don't know what they say. What do they say on the bottle here? What do they say? It says, joints should fit tightly. Apply a heavy spread of glue to surface and clamp for a minimum of 30 minutes. Do not stress joints for 24 hours. Remove excess wet glue with clean, damp cloth. Close cap after use. So basically what they're saying is it'll hold after 30 minutes, but you shouldn't do anything to that joint for a day. So for an entire day, you should not do anything. Now, I clamp for generally overnight. These will be in clamps at least until tomorrow. And I think what they're saying is, look, the glue, by saying 24 hours before applying any stress to a joint, what they're really saying is our glue takes 24 hours to cure to its maximum hold. And if you don't, you know, if you put stress on it before then, you're upping your chances of failure. And that's the way I interpret that. 30 minutes is, I think that's, I mean, I guess 30 minutes, but I wouldn't trust 30 minutes. I've come out here and then some of the squeeze out is still wet after 30 minutes. And so to me, that means that if it's wet in the air, it's got to be kind of wet underneath that wood too, don't you think? I mean, that's what I would think. Oh, look, a spam call. Go away. Thank you. Apple Watch strikes again. Spam call, Washington, D.C. Anyway, you know, people have whole entire shows and webisodes and such about glue. There's lots of different glue theories and glue. There's different types of glue. I mean, this is Type Bond 2, standard wood glue. I use this for most everything. Cutting boards, I use Type Bond 3 because it's a waterproof glue. And so you don't want your glue dissolving in a cutting board scenario. You need it to hold. So, or if it's going to be something for outside, I would use Type Bond 3. Otherwise, I just use Type Bond 2. I use this for pretty much every woodworking thing, guitars, you name it. I use Type Bond 2. It's just kind of like to me, that's the gold standard. That's set for glue. But I mean, there's, you know, Elmer's makes wood glue. Gorilla glue. Some people like the was it like the poly glue or whatever? I know my wife is actually a big fan of the Gorilla Glue, and that's the stuff that kind of foams. I don't know if you've seen it, but it does a little foamy thing. Because she'll like fix lifting veneer and such, and she'll put that in a needle and squirt it inside and stuff sometimes. But they also make a yellow glue. I think Gorilla makes a yellow glue as well. And she just prefers that for whatever reason. But I'm a good old Type Bond guy, just always have been. So I don't know. I think, you know what? As long as you're happy with your glue and it works, I don't really care who makes it, right? Yeah, my truck parade is back in session. They gave it a rest for the weekend, but I don't know. They have trucked in more dirt. They could have filled in a soccer arena with the amount of dirt they've hauled into that place. I tried to see, I tried to be the nosy neighbor and like rode my bike down there this weekend. I couldn't really tell, except to know that he's got a bobcat down there too. So he's pushing around whatever dirt they're bringing up, they're pushing it around. Seems like a lot just to raise chickens. But who knows? Maybe he's putting in a swimming pool. He needs a ton of fill dirt or something for a nice level ground or something. Who knows? One day, hopefully, I will bump into him, you know, once I'm corona proof and stuff. Hopefully that day comes. It hasn't come yet. I'm still waiting for my vaccine. But fingers crossed, I think the 18th they open up to everybody in my state, to all age brackets, because I did not qualify under the last age bracket because I was not elderly enough, which, you know, I guess is an okay thing too, but I also didn't have any job or anything that really required me to be protected or to protect the public at large. So still waiting on my vaccine. Thankfully, my folks have had theirs because they are in their young 80s and doing quite well, but they've had theirs. I know that was, you know, kind of a scary thing. If you had parents that were older, it was just really, really a scary thing. And I think I said last week, I have a friend who retired about the same time I did last year, and he is now in the hospital with COVID. So, you know, the threat is still out there, and I will be super happy when I get my shot or shots and can sort of try to move forward. But anyway, all right, look, we have 2 bases now with corners. I still have to do a couple of others. So let me do some stuff here. I'm going to set this one aside as well. And let's look at this one. Let's see. What do I want to do here now? I kind of did everything I was going to do, and it took me less time, but I have, pardon me for hydrating, strawberry and cream, good stuff. Anyway, I have this one, my oops box, that I could do the corners in. I could do the rear corners of that one. And then I have these 2 others that do not have corners cut for them. Well, we can go ahead and cut those, measure those, and cut those corners. That would be easy to do. We could certainly go forward on that. I'm going to have to make special modifiers, and so the oops box can wait. Oops. Oh, there they go. Oh, and not to mention the fact that my street's being paved too, so there's been that commotion going on as well. There was no... Yes, that's my face. Recognize my face. Thank you. Just to make sure there was no messages or anything. No messages. All right. Let me make sure there's nothing coming from you all. Nothing. Very quiet today. Very quiet. All right, I'm going to grab this. Now, in terms of my little block of triangular wood here, the one thing that I can do is figure out, well, how many more of these can I get out of here? At 2.5 inches, We'll just go with 2.5 inches as a ballpark measurement. So obviously I need 4 of these things, so that's 10 inches, right? Every time I make a cut, I lose 1/8 of an inch because the kerf of the blade takes away 1/8 of an inch of wood. So what I need to figure out is I need 10 inches plus 3/8 because there'll be a cut, and a cut. Well, yeah. To get 4, I need 10 and 3/8 inches minimum, I'm thinking. I have more than that. I've got 14 and 3/4 inches. So we've got plenty of wood here to do that with. But that gets me 1 base. I need 2. So what I will end up doing is cutting another section of triangular wood out of the piece that we used the other day to get this. The nice thing is that when we cut this, we angled the blade at 45 degrees. And so we had this little trapezoid. No, it's not a trapezoid. It's like a pentagon kind of thing. Well, no, it's a trapezoid. So we got this trapezoidal shaped thing. The nice thing is that instead of tipping the blade to 45 like we had to do to get this, now I can just run the blade straight down through and cut this section off. And that will give me another triangular section that is quite long. And I can use that. I'll just save it for later. It's 48 inches long. So that gives me a nice long section. I will save that for the next group of bases that I make. And it will certainly, I'll use 10 and 3/8 inches to get one of those. But then it'll allow me to have at least 2 more out of that. So let's see about cutting this one though, because we have this one already. So let's cut this one. And what on earth is going on today? Because there's beeping and things going and stuff. And okay, really? Oh, the guy was it was a guy. So I live near Washington D.C. and around Washington D.C. is something we have called the Beltway. It's kind of famous for this area. It's called the Beltway. Other places have beltways too, but it's the Beltway here. It's I guess some guy like had stopped traffic and was doing donuts in the middle of the Beltway. The Beltway is like 4 or 5 lanes wide in places. So people, whatever. I don't understand. People today are just so kooked out. They're so kooky. Why are people so kooky these days? I don't get it. I mean, you know, oh, they've been held inside too long. Nobody's been inside. Come on, give me a break. People are still out. Have you been to the store lately? People are out doing their thing. They're just wearing masks. That's all. That shouldn't make people crazy. But apparently it does. Like cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs crazy. Yes, I'm old. All right, let me get this set up. And then we're going to mark our quarter. Because we said, remember, we're going to do 0.25. So 1/4 of an inch. And we're going to mark that. If I get my pencil here. We're going to mark those inside here and then measure how far up from the bottom that 1/4 of an inch line is, because we want to create corner posts that come up to that mark, so that everything at that mark, even though the posts may be different lengths, they will all equal out at 1/4 of an inch from the top. And that's what we're going for. So let's see what we got here. Hopefully these are 2.5. That would be really awesome. Oop, 2.5. 2.5. I like it when things work out. Hopefully this half, you gonna work out for me? Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. All right. So we can do 2.5s on here. That's awesome. Now I'm going to set this to, well, hang on. Before I do that, since I've already got this set to 1/4, I'm just going to draw my lines here because it's just easier to do it while it's already set up, because I'm going to change this measurement on this. And if I haven't set it before, get yourselves one of these things. They're so awesome. You can do so many different things with it. It's just a great setup tool. I don't know what it's called, but if you go on the Craig website and you're looking for like measurement tools or whatever, you'll find it. Yeah, so handy. I mean, seriously, so handy. It's a depth gauge and a level and just, it's, you know what? Hang on, let me see. This is called the multi-mark. So there you go. Go on to Craig Tools. Let's do it right now, shall we? Let's just take a moment, shall we? I think we shall. We're going to take a moment here. We're going to go to Craig Tools. And I'm sorry, you can't see this, but I'm going to go to Craig Tools. Craig Tools. And multi-mark. There we go. We're going to go multi-mark. There's the product. And there it is. Oh, stop it. You know, I didn't even know. I forgot I could do this. So this is 15 bucks. And here's what I haven't shown you about this thing. Is that I've shown you that it can go up and down and those things, right? So you can get your depth measurement and all the other stuff. Here's what else you can do. Loosen the screw up quite a bit. And by the way, you can put the screw in down at the other end too. It has a screw here. But if you loosen it up enough, there's a notch in here that, there you go. Now you've got a sliding square like that. I mean, come on. That's just awesome. So you can use it in the long ways and make a mark all the way across, or I mean, it's just awesome. By the way, on the back side of the scale, like it has inches on this side, there is metric on the other side. So you got that going for you. There is another one down here. I'm not sure what this other one's for. It has like a rounded portion of it. They don't show you all the uses of this thing, which is kind of interesting because you would think that that it would show you like how to use the different features of it. But anyway, it's just a handy little thing. I don't know what else to say, except that if you don't have one, you really should get one. $15, you might be able to find it cheaper. I got this for, I think, $11 at the woodworking show. It's on sale. That's one of my favorite little tools. That, like my little saddle tool that I have, wherever that went to, it's around here somewhere. But yeah, there's a couple of little tools that I just use all the time. This little marking gauge that I just made. Oh, and here's my saddle tool. Just some of these things are just, I mean, you can do it other ways, but man, once you have tools like that, you really don't want to do it any other way because it's just so handy. All right, this one, I'm just going to measure this real quick. I'm not going to cut these because I don't have enough, but see, you had to be that way, didn't you? This one's a little shorter. Yep, this one is not. So there you go. Just a little shorter. Are you shorter on this end? Wow. This one's actually my most troublesome one. I got to check to make sure I don't have glue and debris in the bottom. But anyway, you know what we do have? We have this one right here. 2.5 inches is what we need. We're going to mark our 2.5 inches on the scale here. And let's go cut some corners. Let me get this exactly right. We're going to measure, this is the, yeah, so this is a rough end right here. So I know that this is the end I've been cutting on, so it's nice and square because I've been cutting it on the saw over there. So let me draw my lines and we'll get this first one done. Is everything hooked? Everything's still hooked up over there. So all I need to do is grab my ears. We can switch cameras and go cut some corners. I think I have, yep, I have everything I need. Well, almost everything. I need my remote for my dust collector. And let's get this going. this a little long. Okay. All righty. Would be perfect. And it is perfect. And get rid of the fuzz. All right. So we have 4 corners for this one. Just kind of throw them in here and make sure that looks good. And everybody looks good. And like I said, I can always bring in my test model here and it looks lovely. So there we go. Awesome. All right, I'll put this down here for right now. All right, these are good. Before I cut the ones for that last one, we have to actually make another triangular piece for it. And that means I need to kind of clear some room here because this piece of wood is kind of long, so it's going to push up a table here. I just need to make sure that everything's going to be clear from its path when it pushes through here. So about like that. And let me drop these in the drawer here. Oops. There we go. And okay, we're going to go over to the table saw and set this up for a cut, which means I need to do this. I need to come over here and get my dust collection and put that into the table saw. And this is where I really envy those people who have the ductwork set up all over their shop and all of their tools individually connected to dust collection, because wow, what a time saver. You know, just hit the button and all you have to do is slide a port open and you're in good shape. All right, I'm going to switch the camera here to this one So we're going to switch over to this. No, this. And we're going to zoom out, 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 out. There we go. There we go. Perfect. Right there. Is that good? I think that's good. That looks good to me. That's where I'll be operating. All right. So I need to get my saw blade up above the level here. And then I need to figure out where my cut needs to go. And if you remember, I said that I had my saddle square and I really like that. I'm going to get that again. It's like, oh yeah, I really love this tool, but I got to find that tool. There it is. I get my pencil because I want to find the right spot to get this cut in here. So let me set this down and get this lined up on here. I just want to get a line on here, although this edge is kind of hard to see because it's rough sawn, so it's kind of dark, but that should be enough for me to see. When I push this in here, I need this to be lined up on this side, not this side. I need that line to be on this side so I get my complete triangle here. So I need to bring my fence over. Like I said, I like to move that fence, lock it down, check my measurement, make an adjustment, lock it down, because sometimes it shifts just ever so much. Now, that should give me a 45 cut with a straight one. I'm hoping, let me see something here. I run that in there. Is that going to be, it needs to come over just a hair. That's what I thought. So I need to go back this way, just a touch. There we go. All right, that should be set up. Now the other thing I need to do is set up for my fence here. I'm going to lower these down so I can keep this square against the side and have pressure on the table so that now this does not tip. I mean, it expands a little bit, but that's going to keep it inside of this cut area right here. And like I said, I'm only going to use this at the end. For the most part, I'm going to be feeding by hand right here. And then as I get closer to the end, I will go ahead and grab that and use it to finish passing the wood through the saw, because I respect my saw and I don't like to have my digits anywhere near. All right, I need my hearing protection and I need my remote control for the dust collection, which I left over here. And yeah, almost 1 o'clock, so doing good on time. We'll go ahead and get this finished up. Maybe I'll cut those last 4 and then we will be good to go. All right, let's make a cut here, shall we? And in cases like that, I just turn the saw off and wait for it to stop spinning before I move wood away from it, because there are more kickback accidents from people moving wood out of the way. Like if there's a block back here, they go to move it and that saw catches it, and yeah. So when in doubt, if I'm not pushing more wood through to clear that blade, I will just leave it, turn the saw off, and then I'll move the piece of wood out of the way. You know, to me, the biggest thing is just respect the awesome power and abilities of your saw to remove digits before you could actually say ouch. Yeah, it's like that. Okay, we have triangles now. And, well, I don't know, what do you call a, it's not a cube. What do you call the triangular, three-sided piece of geometry? Fails me. Geometry is failing me. Anyway, we have the ability now to measure 3 more. I've got this, which I really don't know what I'm going to do with this piece of wood. Probably nothing. It'll go in the scrap bin because I can't make any more corners out of it because it's just too small. So it has served its purpose, but I did get another full face for triangles on it, so for corner pieces, and I'm very happy about that. Like I said, it's difficult because when I mill the wood down, a 3/4 inch piece gives me too small of a triangular cut in there. I need something, this was almost an inch thick, and that seemed to be the perfect size. My last base. Let's get over here to this last base here, shall we? And before we do that, I'm going to I'm going to set the saw up to where it was just a moment ago. So put the dust collection back in here and go grab the power cable and put it back in place. And then, oh, there we go. Then we'll be ready to make some cuts. After measuring, it looks like I've got a couple of different measurements on this one. I did not get lucky in terms of them all being the same size. So we will have to make some measurements here and see what's what. Now, first of all, yeah, that was exciting. I just wanted to make sure I get all the dust and debris out, because if the ruler is sitting on dust and debris, obviously I'm not going to get an accurate measurement. This one is a little low. It's 7/16. This one is like a 32nd below a half. This one also like a 32nd below a half. This one is at 7/16. Let's do 2 at 7/16. And then, yeah. And then we can go from there and do the other kind of weird ones. Now, I don't know if this corner right here is square or this side is square. It may not be. In that case, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go chop this off really quickly over at the saw, just so that I know I'm starting with one very squared up end before I do any measurements on here. So let me pop over to the saw here and get that cut down. Notice I put a piece of wood right here just to kind of hold it up because it is long, and I didn't want it to droop down. If I'm cutting long boards, I actually have wings on this thing that I can flip up and support the wood, but for here, I try not to interfere with my CNC machine too much. So, all right, let's cut this really quick. All right, that gives us, ears. That gives us a nice square corner, and we can measure out our 7/16 on here, which means I have to change this to 7/16 and be as accurate as I can be here. Let me just check that line. 7/16. All right. And then get the fuzzies off of here. Mark this at 7/16. with the mystery pencil. There it is. Okay. Last one here. So 7/16. And I need 2 of these, so I'm going to make one, and then I will just check it really quickly, and then I will make the other one off of the measurements, off the first cut. And then we'll measure out for that second one again, and we'll measure it again just to make sure that we're getting the right cut that we need. I'm going to bring this with me. All right, this should be the first 2. These should fit on this side, right to the line, and right to the line. Now we may need to measure these. And these were the ones that were like a 32nd under. Jeez. All right, let's figure out what that is. I'm gonna come back over here and just like a 32nd under, like that. All right. Draw another line right here on this one. Just get that fuzz cleaned off of there. And finish it all the way across. All right, let's see if we can get this one cut. Anybody notice I forgot something? Okay. Now that should hopefully give me the, actually, before I sit down, grab this. Just check to make sure that I'm getting the exact measurement I needed to be. All right. 1, 2. Buckle my shoe. I think we're in good shape here. There we go. Okay. We have them all cut and done. And really all I need to do now is put these in glue and clamps, and then they will be good to go. Once all that is done, we can do the last, like I said, the last part of the process, which is making a nice 1-inch roundover on these corners right here. The 1-inch roundover is kind of I could do less, but the old bases really did have very large, like 1-inch roundovers on there. So I kind of try to be true to the original design and construction of the bases that that Singer made. This construction over here with the little notches, the dados and such, is exactly the same construction that they used to use on their bases, which is why I use that. I could do other construction on here. I could do miter joints with splines, or I could do finger joints, which I've done before and stuff. But for the most part, I try to stay true to the original design of the bases, with the exception of I don't put hinges in mine. I think hinges, like I showed you earlier, these have hinge pins on here, and then they use what we would call lollipop hinges, which are kind of round hinges. The wood on the back side would be basically double the thickness to accommodate for the lollipop hinge, and then you would be able to tip the machine back. The problem is you don't want to tip these machines back. They're heavy and it would just flop over. So really those hinges are, in my opinion, are made for tables. But that being said, what do we got here? We're a little after 11 o'clock. We've been at this for a couple hours, so I think this is a good spot to call it a day. I have more to do, but hopefully when we come back on Wednesday, I'll show you where we're at. We should have all of these glued together and be ready to round the corners. I'll save that until Wednesday, because there's a special way that I do that. I do it on the table, on the router table, but there's something that I do to really make sure that they are nice and rounded and survive the routing process, and I want to share that with you. So we'll wait till Wednesday to do that. And yeah, I think we're getting very close to the finish line on these things. I don't know how many weeks we've been doing this now, a couple of weeks. If you've been along for the ride, I hope you've enjoyed it. We're not done yet. We got a little bit more to go, but we're getting close. A little light at the tunnel there. So, all right. Have a wonderful rest of your Monday. Have an excellent Tuesday. I hope to see you back here on Wednesday. If you're watching on YouTube, if you want to hit the like button or the dislike button, either way, that would be great. If you are not subscribed and you want to know when I'm doing these things, if you want to punch the subscribe button, hit the bell or whatever, lets you know when I come live. I do go live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, more or less, hopefully, at 11 o'clock. I am also streaming this on Facebook, on my Facebook page, not my personal page, but my Facebook page, which is JR's Woodshop. If you go to facebook.com/JR's Woodshop, you can find that and some other stuff in there. I also stream this on twitch.tv/JR's Woodshop. And yeah, you can follow me on there. You can subscribe to my page on Facebook. All those good things would be very appreciated. If you got anything out of these today, or if you just enjoy hanging out and watching, awesome. Thank you very much. Have an excellent end to your day.